Hey everyone, welcome back to Good, Good, Bad, our new series that dives into adventures near and far, and the range of emotions and human experiences that occur when someone follows an idea to completion. Today, our guest, friend of the diaries, professional skier, and activist, Brody Levin, comes to us not with a singular adventure, but more of an ongoing project, a state of mind / obsession. You may remember Brody from our episode 2 years ago called Last Skier Standing. If you haven't heard that show, it's a classic story of rivalry, stubbornness, and human endurance. In the midst of winning that event, Brody was also engaged in another ongoing personal challenge: exercise outdoors every day. It sounds deviously simple. It is not. I'm Fitzcahall. This is Good, Good, Bad. You're listening to the Dirtbag Diaries.
At some point, I decided that I was going to exercise outside every single day without any days off. And that doesn't mean pretty much every day, because I think a lot of us, like outdoorsy folks, like get outside pretty much every day, whether that's 3 days a week or 6 days a week. Like, I'm sure I've gone weeks at a time without taking a day off in the past. But what's different about this is that A, it has to be outside, and B, there aren't exceptions. Like, a long travel day is not an exception. A really stressful day of work, a wedding day, these things are not exceptions. I'm not a goal-oriented person, so I didn't go into this saying, starting today, I'm doing this. And I've never thought about that, but I do wonder at what point I realized I haven't taken any time off. Maybe I should keep doing that. So the last day I took off was Christmas Day 2020, but I don't know at what point I realized, like, oh, it's been a week, or it's been 3 weeks, or it's been 6 months without taking a day off. Whenever I realized that I didn't set about it with like the intention of having a certain number of days or certain number of years during which I would not take a rest day. Instead, it was like, wake up every morning and recommit to myself that today I will do outdoor exercise. And so I eventually needed some version of a rest day or a shorter day because something came up for me. Because when I started, it was a 10-mile running minimum and a 4,000 vertical foot skiing minimum. And those are both, for me, pretty time consuming endeavors. And so at some point, I notched it down to a minimum that I thought was realistic. And I thought it was just going to be, it had to feel like exercise, and I would just kind of know that myself, but I didn't want to be able to fudge it to myself. And so I said it has to be a 5K run or a quote unquote few thousand feet of skiing. Those are still 4 years later my minimums, but I've learned that what I thought was a 5K has been wrong for like 3.5 of those years. And a few thousand feet of skiing has just been pretty loose. And then like a few pitches of rock climbing. It's just the running one's the one that needed a minimum, because running is what ends up happening the most. It's the fastest. And I could have easily worked around that if I didn't give myself a minimum. But doing a really slow 5K eventually starts to feel like a version of the rest day. The only thing you don't get is a rest away from the time. And it turns out this is like a chunk of time every single day that you don't always have available to you.
Why did you think this would be a good idea?
I don't know if I did think it was going to be a good idea, Fitz. like I thought it was an idea. And I think that might have been the extent of like what kind of idea I thought it was. I was trying to remain really, really responsible during COVID, not going into avalanche terrain. But I work as a professional skier, and not going into avalanche terrain can be quite inhibitive with like what I do. And not getting proper exercise can not be great for me. And so I decided to do it as something to do. The thing is, you might think as a professional athlete, like I make a whole thing out of it, but no one knew I was doing it until 4 years in. This whole 4 year concept is just kind of a trip to me. Like I started when I was 33 years old. I'm 37 years old now. Like I started when I was living in downtown Salt Lake with a pretty new girlfriend. Now I'm living in the suburbs with an adorable dog and a wife. Like COVID came and, kind of went during this. We've had 2 presidents during this. Like it's just kind of like messes with my mind how long I've been doing it, but at no point do I really reflect. It's like I can't remember what I did on this day 3 years ago, right? I go to sleep, often having done my exercise near the end of the day, and I think, God, there's no way I'm going to do something again tomorrow. I'm like already sore or tired. I have a busy day or whatever. And I wake up, instantly commit to myself, okay, today's going to be another day I do this. And then I just dread all day when I'm going to get that. And the thing is, I'm not a morning person. So it's not like wake up all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and go for a little run from my house. It's more like, okay, wake up, do some work on my computer, do normal life things. And then all of a sudden it's 3 p.m. and it's snowing or it's pouring rain or it's sleeting. And I'm trying to fit this in before sunset, but I also have dinner plans and my wife needs to go. So I need to watch the dog. Like there's all these things that like we can all relate to that just get in the way of it every single day. And the only time I really think back on this as a 4-year project is when I think about the fact that every day of those 4 years, I've had those obstacles to encounter and overcome in getting to do this outdoor exercise.
And it's worth pointing out that in the middle of this process, you did the last skier standing where you skied uphill. You did 68 laps, like 68,000 feet uphill over the course of 3 days. Like obviously those days where you're like, I kind of know what I'm doing today. Like that wasn't a hard wake up. But I imagine that the day after last skier standing must have been a hard day.
That was maybe the hardest day I've had in 4 years because it's been really hard to set, I don't want to say lofty goals, but it's been, I used to go out and ski a 15,000 foot ski day or go run 50 miles or 100 miles or whatever. And I didn't do these things all the time, but I did them a few times a year. I did them regularly enough that my year kind of in some ways revolved around these. It's been really hard to have an objective of like a big day when the day that I'm planning that, the day before, shoot, I also have to get out and do something. Mm-hmm. And the day after, I have to get out and do something. And I know how I get really sore, especially I get really sore. And like next days and 3 days later can be really tough for me. So I've had fewer big days in the past 4 years than I have in the previous 10 years. My like overall mileage, overall vertical gain throughout the year has been significantly less with 365 days of exercise than it was with, what was I doing before? Maybe 320 days of exercise or something like that. And days like last skier standing when, I didn't sleep for 72 hours was brutal because, all right, those 3 days, I know what I'm doing. That's awesome. I can stop thinking about the stupid run that torments me all day or ski or climb or whatever. But the next day, okay, I have to fly home. I remember the day that last skier standing ended when Ben Eck finished and called it quits. It was like, I'd forget, 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. or something. And one of the first things I thought of was like, thank God I don't have to do anything else today. Last skier standing ends at whatever, 3, 4 a.m. I have a flight at 8 a.m. I can't walk. I almost have to ask for a wheelchair in the airport. I have no voice at all. I get home at, I forget, 10 p.m. or something like that. I sleep really well. I can barely move. The next day when I wake up, I'm instantly dreading what I have to get done that day. Even if it's still 12 hours away, it's just going to haunt me all day. And that has been so frustrating. And it's like, okay, yes, this is self-imposed. Like I don't have to do this, but I'm really not good at stopping things once I start them. Okay, so I did that last skier standing thing, right? Like at the finish line, pretty much, they go, hey, are you coming back for Bubba's? And I'm like, what's Bubba's? And they're like, oh, it's the running version of this race that happens in like 6 months. And I'm like, I haven't slept in like 3 days. Can I like think about this later? The next day I sign up for Bubba's, it's like a backyard, what's it called? Backyard Ultra?
Yeah, it's like 3 miles over and over and over and over again until
until you quit.
Yeah, which is like probably not what you should be doing in the middle of this like streak thing. But the thing is, the streak is not what's most important to me. It's like I'm still going on big trips and I'm trying to fit big things like this into my schedule. So I went back in October and did that. And like that, I ran like 120 miles or something like that over the course of 2 days without sleeping. And it like sucked to have to fit that in too. But like it didn't, because like that was more important to me than the streak. But that sucked because I quit at like 10 p.m. or something like that, which meant the next day I not only had to fly home, but I had to do something. And I was dreading it. And that may have been the lamest activity in the past 4 years, which is like, okay, if the rule is 5K and it has to feel like exercise, well, walking around the main state fair yesterday with my Strava, or the next day with my Strava running, was like definitely going to check that box. I mean, I could barely move, right? And like that was like, oh, I got something out of the way today, but it was hard. Like that was way harder for me than a lot of the days I had in the interim,
Like on a level, this sounds like a terrible idea, but this is obviously like this is something you created on your own, that you're self-imposing. What's been the magic in it though, when you get down to it?
My relationships are really strengthened by time, like on the skin track or on like the running trail. My ski partners and my running partners are also my best friends. And that is time that like I've had more of that time than in the past 4 years than I've had at any other point, pretty much. I have been able to like really spend quality time with folks. I think learning about the fact that I can rely on myself and count on myself, but also I think the durability that I have, whether that's physical or mental, like I'm durable. I've realized I've been in bike accidents. I've had injuries throughout this whole thing, and pushing myself to get out every day has been like a quiet personal testament to the fact that like I think I've still got it, and I can do hard things and I can push hard. And like I'm 37 years old, I'm a professional athlete. Often those two things don't go together. This was one way for me to consistently convince myself that like, hey, I'm still here, I'm still going. It definitely filled a void that I wouldn't have expected to have in the way that I did. Granted, if I took a rest day once in a while, that void still could have been filled. Like you can fill a void of not being able to go outside by going outside only 6 days a week instead of 7. But for me, it's really important for me to see things through to the end, even if those things don't have an end date. And this one doesn't, unfortunately.
Why do you think you couldn't just stop? Like, what would happen if you stopped tomorrow?
When you asked me to be on the podcast, I was like, man, maybe it'd be cool if like I said, yeah, today's the first day I'm stopping. I'm done. Like today's the first day of the rest of my life.
But you already did something.
Yeah, I went skiing this morning. And like this morning, I wasn't doing that for the streak. I went skiing because a friend asked me to go skiing and it's like great snow. So of course I'm going to go skiing. That's the same way that like most of us go outside because we truly want to.
Yeah.
This lent me the opportunity to have some control in my life that I, in some ways, felt was lacking. I don't have like a routine like so many folks do. Like I don't go to an office for work. I also don't have steady income or any job stability, right? So like I definitely have a tendency to feel like I've lost control of my own life. This was able to, again, fill a void as far as control goes, some consistency. I knew I wasn't going to be going to an office every day. I know I'm not getting like my pension every month, but like I know that I am going to go outside today. And that's like an opportunity to reset because my day is pretty much divided between before outdoor exercise and after outdoor exercise.
I don't know how many people in the sort of greater, like outdoor community, people that are passionate about the outdoors, like totally know about what's happened in the outdoor industry. But it has been a very difficult time. It went from being a golden age to almost getting set back 2 decades prior, realistically. In the last few years, like there have been entire athlete teams that have been laid off overnight. It's a wild situation because as an athlete, you sign a contract, but in the fine print, they can tear that contract up at any moment in time. And that has happened repeatedly to many people that we know. It's happened to you. So often we think of this as like, oh, we think about it in terms of the expeditions of being like, oh, they're getting to fly around the world. They're planning expeditions. They're doing these incredible things. And that is awesome. But you also need to grow and evolve as a person. And as you point out, it's like there comes a time where you're like, I'd like to buy a home. I would like to have steady healthcare. I would like to have all these things, right? And on a level, like having gone through a period where you have had a lot of turmoil, you have had a lot of uncertainty in your life, was just this your way of being like, hey, I maybe don't have control over the rest of this. I don't know whether I'll get to be like a quote unquote professional athlete 3 years from now, but I know that if I go out and I use the time that I have, I can go do something that I truly love. Was that your way of having authorship?
I do think so, because I feel like so much in my life, particularly in my career, is out of my hands. And I think that is me subconsciously telling myself that I can advance my career forward 2 steps. Granted, companies aren't hiring me or honestly a lot of professional athletes based on like the marginal fitness gains we make on any given day. I'm not running, an Olympic marathon. What I do for work is like very obscure when it comes to the professional athlete thing. Granted, all of the ramifications of the outdoor industry peaks and valleys that you referred to are like very applicable to me. I have had 3 athlete teams that I'm on get completely cut over the course of this 4-year streak that I'm on. That's like how I pay my mortgage. This is my job. And like I have put absolutely everything I have into this, knowing that it's going to be an uphill battle, knowing that it can't last forever, knowing that economic headwinds and other headwinds, political headwinds act against what I've dedicated my entire life to. But it's something that I've wanted bad enough that I continue to dig in. And I think that is kind of reflected in this streak, that like it's something I wanted bad enough on a daily basis that when I had COVID and I can like barely move around my house or drink or eat or whatever, I'm going to like stumble out of my house in a rainstorm and do this little trot for a 5K, because I know I have control over that at least.
And support comes from Kuat racks. When the temperature drops and the sky starts dropping those fluffy flakes, it's time to throw the grip on the car. Because that first pow day, it happened yesterday. The slide-out tray makes loading and unloading easy, so it's easier to get your stuff on top of the car. It's kind of a pain in the ass to do in ski boots, but this makes it easy. And with 2 sizes holding up to 6 sets of skis or 4 snowboards, the grip makes heading to the mountain a party. Life's always better with friends, right? And like all of the products, the grip ski and snowboarding racks are covered by the No Worries limited warranty. So whether you're on the road or the mountain, we've got your rack and your back. Kuat, because you love your gear. Sunburned, windburned, freezer burned. My skin and face take a lot of abuse, even when I do my best to hide it under hats and sunscreen. Terns, like the bird, is a skincare company with 2 revolutionary products that help skin recover from exposure to the elements. Terns has Every Day, a daily after sun lotion, and Mayday for when you get a little too much sun. That's never happened to me, I swear. Terns is led by Eduardo, a chemical discovery scientist and also a lifelong surfer, diver, and fisherman. With Terns, Eduardo combined 2 of his life passions to create products made with natural ingredients derived from the ocean. In this case, it was kelp. Made in the US, Terns is vegan and cruelty-free. Terns has become part of my routine. Sunscreen in the morning, rage all day, Terns afterwards. And my face, it feels a lot better. After sun should not be an afterthought. Use the code DIRTBAG to get 25% off your first order at terns.com. We'll put a link in the show notes and you can try Terns for yourself. Have there been days where you've sort of absolutely dreaded it and then you go and do it and maybe it stops raining, maybe the sunshine comes out, but like have there been days where there's been that sort of dread and that you find yourself kind of like knowing why you're doing this?
Yeah, I think it's actually worked both ways. Like I'm fortunate. My life is vibrant, right? And there are days where I'm having a good day. I'm getting a lot done. It's great weather. And I go out for my ski, my bike, my climb, my run, and it's just not there for me. All athletes of all abilities can relate to this. Like some days you just don't have it. Your legs are heavy or whatever. That's annoying for me because that's like pretty depressing. It like sucks the vibrancy out of my day. On the other hand, there are days where it's dreary, it's cold, and I have to go for a bike ride or whatever. And I get out there and I come home, and Katie, my wife, is like so good about asking about my run, my ride, my ski every single day, which is crazy because normally I'm like a teenager coming home from school. I'm like, whatever, I got it done. But I'll come home on those days when she knows maybe I've had a bad day already. And I'll be like, actually, my bike ride was really good. I saw 2 elk and a really nice person said hello to me. And I got to like watch a dog run along like the fence of his house while I was riding. And that sounds like romanticized, but I think we all know like on a bad day, you can notice like the smallest good things. And getting outside is something I pretty much never ultimately regret. I have this like insatiable need that I think a lot of listeners can relate to of like, I have to get outside. And I think one thing that this little streak has offered me is that like, I now get outside every day when before, if I had like a long work day, I could like not leave my house. And I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in that. You like open up the door to let your dog out and you're like, whoa, fresh air. I forgot I haven't experienced that today. I didn't know if it was warm outside or cold outside. And I mean, dude, I've done this in so many different weather conditions at this point. It's crazy. And like the classic kind of wind or sleet or whatever in your face, it doesn't always feel good at the time, but it can at least be type 2. And maybe it's not even type 2 fun, but it's this like type 2 satisfaction of having done something. Even if that thing, when Katie asks me about it when I get home, I'll just be like, yep, period. I mean, speaking of her, like she's been super supportive of it because I'm like, it's 7 p.m. I haven't done anything. What am I going to do? And she's like, oh, that's why you've been acting that way all day. It's like the classic men will do anything to avoid therapy situation. She's like, he hasn't taken a rest day for 4 days. Like, you think something's going on up there? And maybe that's because like, I mean, it should be said, like, I'm like a straight white guy living today where like my suffering pretty much entirely in my life has been elective. Like I have chosen any time that like I've been having a really hard time physically. I've like gone out of my way to find it. And I think that like says something about where we are as a society, the fact that like I need to search for this. But I think it's one place certainly that I grow and that my partners grow and that my friends that I ski with grow. And if I know I'm going to grow there, I'm going to go out and find it.
How do you think it's going to end?
I don't know, man. I really don't know. I mean, talk about control. Like, I think I can just keep going outside every day and going for a run, bike ride, ski or climb. Like, I think so. And like, if it stops, I do want it to be on my terms. Like, this has been a big part of my life for 4 years now. It's been there for me. I've been there for it. And it's important for me that like, I guess I'm thoughtful with it at this point because I think if I just took today off, took tomorrow off, I think it might mess me up a little bit. I haven't thought about that till right now, but I think it would. And so I don't want to be too flippant about it. Some friends are encouraging me to be. I haven't told anyone this, but I guess I should say it because now I've just said that. So I was flying to Central Asia this year for my first expedition, like in ostensibly 4 years. And I knew I had like a 39-hour travel itinerary to get there. And so, of course, like my first flight leaves Salt Lake at like 5 a.m. And I'm like, okay, easy. I wake up at 1:30 a.m. and get my run in, shower, go to the airport. That sucks, but like I've gotten used to those like weird hours. Like I've done runs at 12:01 a.m., like 1 minute into the day in order to get it done because I know the rest of my day will not allow it. And I've done runs at 11:30 p.m. because I know the rest of the day, that day didn't allow it. Well, I'm flying to Tajikistan. I get delayed. Okay. I'm in the airport. That's fine. I still have like 18 hours left in the day. And then it's like 12 hours left in the day. Well, I have to take into account time zones and like, so I'm trying to figure out like what time zone I'm going to be landing in. And I land in Dubai and it's nighttime. It's like 9 p.m. and my flight's at like 11 p.m. And I'm like, cool. I purposely, for the past 4 years, have packed running clothes in my carry-on for this kind of situation. I get to Dubai and I go to exit and they're like, why are you exiting? And I'm like wearing short shorts in Dubai and everyone's looking at me and they're like, why are you leaving? And I'm like, I just need to go for a run. I'll be back in a half hour or 40 minutes. They're like, you can't do that. And I'm like, why not? And they're like, because this part of the airport is under construction. And I'm like, cool. What part of the airport? I just need to go outside. I will go up and down a runway. I don't care. I need to go outside. I ended up running 4 miles around the terminal inside that day in like 100-degree weather inside this weird wing of the Dubai airport. And so I think I failed that day, 3 years and 6 months in or something like that.
Oh, that's not a failure.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not a success either.
I mean, technically you're like, I don't know. That seems like I hear that, but.
I mean, Fitz, these are self-imposed rules. And one of only 2 rules is that it has to be outside.
Yeah.
Treadmills don't count. That was like, I felt like a failure. Granted, that was completely out of my control. But like so many of these days have felt out of my control. If I have to run at 12:01 the minute after midnight, because it's my only option, like I didn't have fresh air on my face for the entire calendar. I didn't step outside. And I was so mad, man. So I'm counting it, whatever. I'm not making exceptions for anything else, but I've made an exception for that. I think you can tell that like I'm not in the point of hindsight yet because I'm like still in the thick of it. And like I don't think I've walked away from this or I'm in this with any sort of like lesson that I have learned from this, like maybe I just don't know that I'm in it because I'm too in it to step outside of it and see it. Like this fall, in order to check the box for the day, I was going on a road bike ride and I like slid out on some water on like this narrow mountain road that I ride all the time. And it was like that classic kind of cliche road bike slide out where like your bars turn 90 and like your whole bike slides out from under you. And I went back and looked at the data from my little bike computer and I was going 35 when I slid out. 35 miles per hour. I like land on my right side and I slide like between like 75 and 100 feet. Just get completely cheese gratered by the pavement. And I jump up instantly and I'm like, okay, I'm not hurt. I like can't believe it. And I look down and I'm like, my skin is just shredded. And I'm like, oh, I'm very hurt. And I go and this car coming up, it's kind of a 1-lane road at this point in this canyon above my house. And this car's coming up canyon. I'm going down canyon, of course. And they stop and I'm covered in blood. My bike is in the middle of the road. My sunglasses are broken on my face. And they just stop and look at me and just pull into the ditch to avoid me and then go around me and keep heading up canyon. And I was like, oh my God, my bike computer is beeping. I've never heard it beep. And I go and pick my bike up in the wrong lane of the road. And it says incident detected, calling emergency contact, Katie, my wife. And I'm like, freaking thank God, call her. Like, that sounds great. Thank you. And then it says no service, like cannot complete call. And I'm like, oh God. And I like, for some reason, pull my phone out and I try to call her. And I'm like, well, there's still no service because it was just trying to use my cell phone. So I go to get on my bike and I like, as I go to throw my leg over it, I like see kind of how bad it is. I'm like meat grinder, I have a brand new kit on, like spandex top and bottom, completely tore open on one side, shorts and jersey, helmets like all messed up, sunglasses are cracked or broken on my face. The frame is broken in half. My bike is like, I look at it once and I like get a sick feeling in my stomach. I'm like, oh God, this is like my baby. And it's like destroyed. And a car comes up behind me. I'm off the side of the road. He pulls up next to me. He's like, hey man, do you need some help? And I had just tried to get on my bike and I realized that I don't think I can. And I'm like, yes, I do actually. And he goes, okay, cool. And he pulls over in front of me He's like, what do you need? And he's just looking at me like wide-eyed. You know, he's like this young dude. And I'm like, I think I need a ride down. He's like, cool, no problem. And he opens up the tailgate for his like SUV. And he's like, you toss your bike in there. And I look at my hands and they're destroyed. And I'm like, I don't think I can. And he's like, oh, do you need some help? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, hang on. He moves his dog and puts his dog in the back seat and throws my bike in there for me. And I get in, super nice guy. And I'm kind of getting in as carefully as I can. He goes, what are you doing? I'm like, I just don't want to get blood all over your seat. He goes, dude, it's a car. Just sit down. You're totally fine. And he's like, it's just a car. Let's get you home. No problem. And I sit down. He had just moved here from Austin. He had like just moved here. And I'm like, you don't get this every day. Like, sorry, dude. Like, sorry, this is like your first interaction with another human in Salt Lake City is someone who just, you know, is a mess. And he's driving me down and he's talking to me and we're making small talk. And I'm like, your dog's really good sitting in the back seat right now, just like kind of being quiet. He goes, no, my dog's actually a total piece of shit, but he's really empathetic and he can tell when something is wrong. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you look terrible right now. And I started to look at myself and like, the more I looked, the more just blood and flaps of skin and like shards of clothing. And I'm just like, okay, that's great. And we get to the bottom, we're pulling into my house and he's like, why are you out there? And I'm like, cause I'm doing this stupid thing where I like, go outside every day. He's like, even riding your bike in like the rain. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, why are you doing that? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, are you telling people about it? And I'm like, no. And he's like, you should go inside. And I get out of his car. I don't get his name. I don't get anything. He takes his bike out of the trunk for me. And I'm walking up my driveway, like pushing my road bike. And I look bad. And my wife's on the phone and she puts the phone down and comes out. And she's like, what happened? And I'm like, I crashed. And she's like, in fewer words, she's like, this has got to stop. And, you know, I've broken my foot during this. I've had frostbite during this. I've like lost friends in avalanches the same days when I am out skiing during this. And she's like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, I can't help it. And she's like, no, you are the only person who can help it. You are the only person making yourself do this. Literally, no one cares at all. No one else has to know that I'm doing it, but it's for me. And thus, like, I have to know I'm doing it. And I just can't let myself down. But the next day was really, really painful.
I'm sure. Oh my God.
An ER doctor friend like said road rash of that like severity, which is like a burn essentially, is the most painful, non-operable injury you can have. That was my first time, and that I'd want that to be my last. It's like all these things are like, they pale in comparison to like the greater things happening in the world. But like, what is the point of even like being in the world if you're like not doing these like small things that matter to you as well? So it's like, I can spend all my time advocating for like these various things that I care about, climate, avalanche education, whatever, public lands. But like, why am I defending public lands if I'm like not getting out there and enjoying them?
Thanks for chatting with us, Brody. And I hope you keep going, I think. Anyway, you can keep up with Brody and the Never Ender over on Strava. Total animal.
Music today by David Swenson.
Today's episode was produced by Mia Fitzcall and edited by Skylar Perwins. Our theme song is by Jacob Bain and Nis Kodo. Becca Cahal is our executive producer. Big thanks to all the Diaries Plus members who power the show. You make it never ending. You are keeping the streak alive. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Get outside. Move the body. Thanks for listening.